Good morning, children. Today I am Mrs. Ghosh. I'll take class 10th English Literature poem I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou is a powerful feminist writer of Afro-American ethnicity. Maya Angelou had an extremely traumatic childhood, and her poem I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, written in 1969, tells of her life up to the age of 17. The bird in the cage is a symbol of all African Americans and their fight for freedom. It symbolizes the struggle of being a black author whose words are not heard and of one whose long for freedom. The lines grave of dreams, nightmare scream, compare the liberty of the free bird with that of the shackled caged one. Angelo tries to contrast the flight of a bird that is free with the caged bird whose wings are clipped. By projecting two contrasting images of a free bird and a trapped bird, the poem highlights the differences between whites and African Americans. A free bird flies in the direction of the wind. It seems to be dipping his wings in the orange sun's rays. The free bird is confident enough to claim the sky. The caged bird's movement is restricted as his wings are clipped and his feet are tied. The bird opens his throat to sing of things unknown. The caged bird longs for freedom. Its songs is heard in some faraway place. The free bird thinks of other places having pleasant winds and fat worms. The free is not content and is greedy to have more of freedom. The cage becomes the caged bird's grave of dreams, and his cry for freedom is that of a nightmare. But the caged bird movement is limited. The caged bird cannot fly and hence again sings a song earning for freedom. The poem in detail. Stanza wise explanation to be read from the workbook, stanzas 1 to 6. The poem in detail. Stanza 1. The poem begins by referring to the flight of a free bird who springs free from the ground to fly in the direction of an air current. It looks as if the bird had immersed his wings in the orange rays of the sun covering the sky. The free bird flies as if the sky belongs to him. The second stanza. The next stanza expounds the condition of the caged bird who is constantly watching down his cage. He can almost never see through the bars. His vision is. The final stanza is the repetition of the third stanza, which emphasizes the distressed condition of the caged bird. Limited. He is enslaved, his wings are clipped, and his feet are tied. Under such circumstances, the only option he has is to open his throat to sing. Stanza 3. The caged bird quavers while singing of the things unknown. He realizes his condition but still longs for freedom. The poet reveals that the bird's cry for freedom is heard at a faraway place. Stanza 4. This stanza goes back to the unrestricted movement of the free bird. The free bird thinks of another breeze. The poet also mentions the fat worms that are waiting in the lawn at sunrise to be consumed by him. It appears as if the bird had named the sky his own, since there are no other birds to contest with him. Stanza 5. The fifth stanza depicts the bird is in its cage, the cage that has now become the grave of the bird's dreams. The poet describes the bird's cries as that of someone having a nightmare. Once again, the caged bird sings for freedom. Themes of the poem: freedom versus enslavement, racism and slavery, voice against oppression. The theme of freedom versus enslavement runs throughout the poem. Freedom is symbolized through the unrestricted movement of the free bird whereas the enslavement is symbolized by the caged bird, whose wings are clipped and feet are tied. The poem begins with the free bird soaring and floating freely in the sky that he claims as his own. The freedom of the bird in its natural habitat has been appreciated. The free bird's sense of freedom is best expressed when the poet says that the free bird dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. We have a caged bird whose enslavement is represented through his wings that are clipped. The caged bird cannot fly freely in the sky. His vision of freedom is not clear as he can seldom see through his bars of rage. The bird is imprisoned and is filled with rage. He is angry, but at the same time, he is helpless. All he can do is to open his throat to sing for freedom. The caged bird's condition is so distressful that the cage becomes a symbol of his grave of dreams. The bird longs for freedom in his song. The poem ends on a positive note as his tune is heard at some distant hill. The free bird represents the white race and their domination, whereas the caged bird becomes a metaphor of African Americans and their confinement. The poet expresses his agonizes and grievances through the restricted flight of the caged bird. The caged bird represents the African American race who was struggling to create a peaceful environment for himself in the racist society. They were denied the right to vote, to organize a meeting, or to gather together. Owing to the color of their skin, they were not allowed to use the same transport, public toilets as to study in the same school as the whites. The caged bird represents this community that was prevented from social, religious, and cultural freedom on account of the color of the skin. The caged bird in the poem is in a state of physical pain and mental agony. A reference to clipped wings and tied feet, restricted movement depict the physical pain that the caged bird had to endure. The loss of freedom resulted in the mental agony for the caged bird. The caged bird knew his strength and used it for expressing his rebellion by singing. Singing is a symbolic of his rebellion against oppression. The song divulges its hope and its inner strength, the African American struggle for freedom and equality. This African American wrote, sang, danced, and cried out for freedom. Though initially they were heard as a distant voice, yet this did not stop them from raising their voice against discrimination faced by them due to the complexion until they were given equal rights as the whites. Maya Angelou in the poem becomes the mouthpiece of the entire African uh, American community to portray the inhuman treatment meted out to them. The free bird gets to enjoy the full sky. The caged bird rarely gets a glimpse of the sky. Angelo, like the caged bird, had so many dreams that had died because she was never given the freedom to achieve. The poem ends on a reaffirmation that the bird will continue to sing the song of freedom and his desire to express himself will not be curtailed. Angelo, like the caged bird, is restricted out but at the same time shows a refusal to be silenced. The only difference is that the bird sings for freedom but the poet writes asking for freedom.